Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very senior professional from India, Mr. Pramod Solanki, PhD, or I should say Dr. Pramod Solanki. Pramod, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. It's such a pleasure to be having this conversation with an accomplished person like you.
Thank you. Very kind of you. Dr. Solanki is the founder of Performance Enablers, which is, he also calls the growth catalysts. He has worked earlier with Larsen and Toubro, TCS, and Sun Pharma. So, Pramod, before we start talking human resources, tell me a little bit about your own journey.
Sure, Ashutosh. After all, that's where it all begins. So I'm a native of a district town called Satna. Jabalpur is a little more known in India, very close to that. After my schooling and, completing my biology graduation, my father decided that I should move to a bigger place, should have a wider exposure. That's how I landed in Delhi University. Did my master's in industrial and organizational psychology. Was fortunate enough to be inducted at IIM Ahmedabad to support, they call it academic support staff for the professors. Did that for about 2.5 years, then landed at your alma mater, Jamnalal Bajaj Institute of Management Studies.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
Yes. I was on their faculty for about 5 years. And from there on, somehow the action attracted me more than only ideation. And that's how I moved to the corporate assignments. So like you said, it's been L&T, TCS, and Sun Pharma. In India, of course, about a 7-year stint in Nigeria, Lagos. And I founded this firm, Performance Enablers, the Growth Catalyst, in 2016. And since then, it's been managing this firm and offering whatever professional service I can do.
How wonderful. So tell me a little bit more about Performance Enablers.
So, Ashutosh, there are 3 parts to what we do. One, and I would say a primary focus is on raising the bar on leadership effectiveness. Largely in the corporate sector, but I have also done some work with the NGOs. So it has executive coaching. It means designing the complete program of leadership effectiveness, which means assessing the leadership capabilities and gaps, designing workshops, individual development plans, action learning projects, the complete gamut of it. So that's one area, leadership effectiveness. Having done HR for a large part of the career, I also consult on the process excellence of HR. So from recruiting process to onboarding, performance management, employee engagement, organizational development, pretty much across the board. So these 2, I largely drive myself with a few experienced friends and fellow professionals who join in, depending upon the scale of the project. And then since last about a year plus, a few clients suggested that, instead of we looking at unknown people for these services, can you not also help us provide talent from the market? So I have put up a small team, and they pretty much take care of providing mid-level and senior-level talent to the organization. So that's what Performance Enablers does.
Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So let's talk about human resources. You spent so many years in this function.
Sure.
So my first question to you is, when I started working with ITC in 1979, the HR function had basically 2 people. One was called the personnel manager. And the other was called the industrial relations manager, because ITC has a lot of factories.
That's right.
I want to get your perspective on how has the human resources function evolved now over the last few decades that it has now become a key C-suite role.
Sure. I think this possibly is the most important part of our conversation. So I see three areas that have evolved very significantly. So one is in terms of the basic HR processes, let's say recruiting, onboarding, performance management. In all of these, I think the ideas, best practices, models, frameworks have developed a lot more than what you would have seen, let's say 40 years, 50 years,
Correct.
40, 45 years ago. The other part that has evolved very significantly is the use of technology and digitization. Almost every piece of HR has benefited from use of technology and digitization. And the third is the part where you mentioned it's become a C-suite role, because frankly, other than the CEO, and to some extent from the financial standpoint, the CFO, if there is one role that looks at the organization from the organizational lens, it is CHRO.
Correct.
Rest of the people look at it from their respective business vertical, standpoint and so on. So that fortunately has evolved. And what you see today is HR a lot more integrated. So when the business plan is drawn, HR is a part of it. And what is the talent readiness for that business plan is an input that has to come from HR leader. And if something needs to be done for readiness of the organization, that plan has to come from the HR leader. So these are some significant changes. In large organizations having factories, you still have industrial relations for sure. But I think the direction is to see that they are also aligned to what the HR leader and the HR business integration is trying to do, rather than pulling in different directions.
Well said. Great response. Thank you. So I'm going to now, since you mentioned technology as the second point where the three things are changing,
right?
Let me first ask you the question is, how is technology changing the human resources function?
So frankly, Ashutosh, I have seen two different types of situations in organizations. At one end, you have what I call a very evolved way of leveraging technology. So besides the fact that it has helped in speed and scale, there are HR leaders and HR functions who are able to leverage it to do the initial signaling that you need. So if there are pockets of disengagement in the organization, in a large organization, manually for a small HR team, it's extremely difficult to know proactively what is happening where. Fortunately, today, you have a technology that can give you initial signals that something is not quite in place here. And then HR function, right from the leadership to the people down the line, can do the deep dive in that area and develop and design their response to that area.
Right.
So that, I would think, is a very evolved way of leveraging technology.
Correct.
There is another end, unfortunately, where some people have looked at this as the new bandwagon to jump into. And they believe that now we can run HR function with technology. So, here is a shared service, here is a chatbot, and then do everything. And frankly, I must say many of them have burned their fingers. We are yet not at a stage where you can completely capture the human context through a technology and properly respond to it. So that is unfortunately the other end of it. I think their HR is suffering a little bit. And then there is a whole spectrum.
Correct.
And I believe that more and more with maturity will have a way to leverage technology in a more mature function rather than in a knee-jerk manner.
Well said. So let me now move to some of the more recent challenges HR has been facing.
Sure.
And the first one and the most obvious one is the 3 years that we have been a part of the pandemic.
That's right.
And I think the CHRO and the CHRO's teams have probably had some of the most trying times to manage their assets, if I can use that term, people assets, working from home. What, in your opinion, have been some of the key challenges and how have they been tackled?
So, we have seen some of them. Ashutosh, this is again an extremely important question in today's context. We have seen some of them and we are experiencing some of them now. So when it all started, whether managers across the board, all the way up to management, whether they liked it or not, they reconciled to remote working and they made the best that they could. Late evening, early morning, meetings happening and all of that, still somehow trying to manage, but they accepted because there was no choice. And I think that time, neither HR leadership or HR folks, nor the management teams as a whole, actually put their heads together to develop long-term systems. And when I say systems, in terms of technology support and the ways of working, the style of management, I think we did not invest enough. And therefore, now that the limiting effect of pandemic is a lot more limited, and management and managers now want to work the way they used to work pre-pandemic, we are experiencing that stress a lot more. They are, I'm talking of the managerial cadres all the way up to the top. They are not happy that people should be working from home. They want them to, a large part of them, there are exceptions, of course, they want them to come to office and work under their nose. Youngsters, having been there, done that for 1.5 years, are not okay with it. They say, no, we have done it for 1.5 years. What is it you're telling you? I work with some of the IT companies, and more than half of their new recruits, upfront, they will ask at the interview stage, I want a guarantee that you will let me continue to work from home.
Oh, wow.
Or else I'm not interested. So it's a struggle going on there. I think some organizations have done it slightly better, but what we have not done enough, managements and HR folks, that 1.5 year that we had, we could have developed performance dashboards that support us in a remote working. We could have trained and influenced and coached the mindsets that ultimately you are interested in the outcomes and delivery and not whether that fellow is working under your nose or not. I think there we have a lot of ground to cover. And what you see now in terms of stress in the joining, leaving and all, I think some of these factors are contributing to it.
Very well said. There's another aspect which I understand has come out of the pandemic, and that is this whole thing of the great resignation.
That's right.
And that has been followed with the great termination. So many companies are letting so many people go. I'd love to get your perspective on both these new terms that have come into the corporate dictionaries.
Yes, absolutely. So again, an extremely important question, Ashutosh. So resignation, of course, by now, these large corporates have reflected and have put out on their websites and statements why it happened. 6 months into the pandemic, the business and consumers pretty much shifted to online behavior and therefore dependence on e-commerce, so much so that no one had seen anything like that before. And like many of these large corporates have said, they obviously wrongly began to believe that now it is here to stay. which was the biggest mistake. And when they decided it's here to stay and the growth of online and e-commerce will continue the way it has been in the first 6 months or 8 months, they went on a hiring spree. So mass hiring was done to cope with the growth in the business. And come later half of 2022, and people, human being, you want to go out, whether it is for eating, whether it is for shopping, a very large population still. You are happy going out.
Correct.
And the experience has shown that now, let's say a couple of months data, these companies are telling us that online e-commerce proportion of the work has gone to the pre-pandemic level. So there's a whole lot of online, offline business happening. So we don't need all that large chunk of people we had recruited. So one significant reason for termination comes from there. The resignation bit is a combination of two things, to my mind. One is, like I said earlier, that while remote working was thrust upon us without any preparation, but we did not show the foresight to develop systems and, more importantly, the mindsets required for remote working. And we continued a very large part of them. Exception is a norm, as you know. Our style of breathing down the neck and how much got done and this and that. So people were waiting for more opportunities and better opportunities. During the peak of pandemic, nobody had choice. Whoever could latch on to the job that he or she was holding, she latched on to it. But as the opportunities opened up, they said, here I go. Other factor that also has contributed significantly is the first 8-9 months of pandemic actually exposed how many of the employers and organizations, what they really think of people. The kind of salary cuts that happened, the kind of summary layoffs that happened, they told employees what are they valued for in the organization. And therefore, even those who were not let go, they saw that another colleague of theirs is simply being told that you don't have to come from tomorrow. And that kind of exposed the intent and how you look at the so-called asset of your company. And therefore, when they got better options, they kind of decided to dump it. So I think these have gone.
Very, very interesting. There's another perspective I thought I must ask you, and that is this big debate about moonlighting or the gig economy. Traditional companies have basically said, we can't allow moonlighting. What are your thoughts?
So this is a difficult one, Ashutosh. So, why I agree with the so-called traditional companies when they say we can't allow moonlighting is because of the way it's being done in a clandestine manner, in the evening, early morning, you do this. Your primary employer, so to say, doesn't even know, what are you sharing, what are you not sharing, whom are you working with. That kind of engagement, possibly no responsible corporate will allow. That having been said, I think the direction of proportion of gig talent growing and the gig arrangement being a larger part of the organization's talent workforce is here to stay, and it is growing. And so long as it is done with transparency, and people like you have worked in number of boards, and everything is upfront. There is nothing to hide. So if gig workers mature and they can be open about their engagement with various people, I think it is a win-win. It is just that you can't be doing it in a clandestine
Well
manner.
said. Well said. Great response. In fact, one of the young people I was speaking to, and I asked, that individual about moonlighting. And the first reaction was, why, if the CEO of my company can sit on different boards and earn from different boards and not give full time to the company,
right,
as a young management member, why can't I do the same thing and work for someone else? And I honestly didn't have an answer, but I think you've said that as long as it is done transparently,
yes,
that is important.
Yes, sure,
Well
sure.
said.
Yeah.
Well said. I have time for two more questions for you. My next question is on, I want to talk to you a little bit about diversity.
Sure.
Diversity, equity, inclusion is being talked about all over the world.
Yeah.
So is it being done in India.
Right.
As someone who's been such a senior HR leader in this country, I want to get your perspective on how seriously are organizations taking up DEI, or is it only because the law wants you to do it?
That's right. So, I'll speak from Indian perspective.
Absolutely.
Ashutosh. So, if you look at what the situation was 20 years ago, for sure there has been a progress. There is an acknowledgement in large companies that we need to pay attention. There are structures created. There are dedicated middle senior level people created. So, there is a progress. But to say that we have fully leveraged the idea, I think we are far from it. That's my view. Because, the diversity in its foundational sense will be, playing its part when you are comfortable with diversity of thinking. And acceptance and inclusion and all of that. I think there in India, we still have a distance to cover. When we are recruiting somebody, if we find that person has a different bent of mind, we still want to say, no, culturally he may not fit here. In a committee, if somebody brings a very different point of view, then you'll find a whole lot of them. No, this doesn't work here in this organization. So and all the way up to the top. So exception is a norm, I always say, but for a very large part. And I think this is where we are missing on a very large opportunity. When we were students of industrial psychology, we were taught that a difference in perspective is an opportunity to find a creative solution, a new solution. And here is an opportunity if you genuinely respect diversity. And today's environment, more than ever before, requires more and more creative solutions. So DIE today is very, very contextual and it's something of the future. But I think we have to grow comfortable with different lines of thought if we have to fully leverage it.
Very, very interesting. Though, I've spoken to many women board members in Indian companies. And the question I asked them was that you are now a part of the board, you are included, but do you have a voice? And majority of them said no.
See?
So, I think we still have a long way to go.
We have a long way to go.
Absolutely. And my last question to you, Pramod, and this is for the thousands of people who will listen to our conversation.
Right.
Based on your amazing journey,
as
such a tall human resources leader, what would you say are 3 lessons you want our viewers and listeners to take away?
Sure. So, Ashutosh, when I reflect about, so I'll speak from my experience.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure that there are more than this ways of thinking about it. So in life, I think more so in India, and for that matter, any developing country, people like us who come from humble backgrounds, they have to constantly strike a balance of the needs and what you aspire. That is a lifelong ask of us. I think what is possible for most of us, that as we cater to our needs, we also push for where our anchor lies.
Correct.
What is it that deeply connects with us? And we find time for it, engage for it, read about it, work on it, reflect on it. I think that's where the opportunity lies to make a significant contribution and in that sense stood out as an outcome of what you do. What happens is we get so consumed by our needs that we don't push for what inspires us and devote enough time and effort there. So that is one thing that I personally found very useful.
Yeah.
The other, more from the point of view of living a more fulfilling life, being happy with yourself and the people around with whom you connect. I think each one of us has certain core values that are dear to us. And as much as circumstances present challenges, I think it is always possible to try and live in consonance with those values. Because I have personally found that it gives you such an enormous reassurance, a force to deal with things when you are called out, out to do. So, it is extremely important that for few shortcuts and short-term gains, we don't deviate from what we deeply value. And, it's very natural that if you, last but not the least, that if you are keen that you live to your potential, then it should be a natural part of your leadership and the way you connect with people around, that you enable them to live to their potential. Because in some way, that's a reflection of your own thinking.
Correct.
And I can definitely say that wherever I have seen in leaders, in HR functions or otherwise, who have brought this thinking that just as I want to be at my best, let by my words and deeds, it should help people to be at their best. I think it has created a great ecosystem.
Absolutely. How wonderful. And on that note, Pramod, then your 3 wonderful lessons strike a balance between what you need and what you aspire for. Second, you said was lead a fulfilling life and live with your core values. And that's such a powerful thing. And the third one, which is so important, that if you have lived your life to your true potential, enable others to do the same. Thank you so much for speaking to me about your amazing journey. Thank you for speaking to me at so much length about human resources, how HR has evolved, how the CHRO has become such a powerful member of the C-suite of most organizations. Thank you for speaking to me about technology, about the Great Resignation, about moonlighting, and so many other aspects of human resources. Thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much. I just enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.